catch me howling at the moon.
What's up guys, and welcome back to Park Pros. The culmination of my quest to ride all of SeaWorld's delayed until 2022, new for 2020 roller coasters, before my Platinum Pass expires in June, brought me to Busch Gardens Williamsburg to ride the world's fastest, for now, multi-launch roller coaster, Pantheon. And I gotta say, this is a pretty damn good roller coaster. While I do think Intamin's latest creation is the best roller coaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, I'm not so sure it stacks up as one of the elite launch coasters in the United States. So we're gonna talk about that on today's Coaster Quickie. But first, if you guys are new to the channel or have been checking out some of the other videos lately, be sure to drop a sub and a like, because it does help us out quite a bit. Also, I started a Park Pros Facebook page, so if you could take a second and show your support over there, that would be much appreciated. It'll be the first link in the description. So let's go ahead and talk about Pantheon. Unfortunately, I was only able to get 2 rides on Pantheon because a launch failure forced the ride to shut down for the day right about the time we were getting ready for an end of the day marathon. But fortunately, my 2 rides were in the front and back row, so I think I have a pretty decent idea of how this thing rides. The first section of track before the main launch has this slow-paced 0G roll that does give some decent hang time, but beyond that, this portion of the ride does kind of feel like filler. These 2 off-axis bunny hops feel very RMC-like, where they serve no real purpose besides filling layout space and are generally just kind of annoying. Then you travel into the main launch section, which I will say is pretty good. I'm usually not the biggest fan of the rockabye, forwards launch, backwards launch gimmick, but I do think it works here, much more so than on Icebreaker. And I think that's mainly because this one is just much larger scale, and also because the main airtime hill closest to the top hat is very good. You hit this hill 3 times, and the first time you kind of just roll up and do it, but during the backwards portion of the launch, you get a pretty lethal dose of backwards ejector on this, especially if you're sitting in the front row. Then of course, the 3rd time you hit it, you're in the process of reaching the ride's top speed of 73 miles per hour, which is a pretty aggressive speed to be hitting this small of a bunny hill at, and that is definitely reflected in the amount of ejector you get. The 2 elements on each end of the launch portion are both just okay. The spike really doesn't feel that tall despite being 17 stories high, and on the top hat, you kind of just crawl over it. But we'll go into that more later. When Pantheon was first announced, there was one element in particular that I was most excited about. And even during some of the testing videos, it looked like it was going to be one of the best elements in the world. And the element I'm talking about is this Steel Vengeance-esque Outer Bank turn. But to me, this element was by far the biggest letdown of the ride. And this disappointing part of the ride really funnels back to Pantheon's main flaw as a roller coaster, which is that its pacing is really not that good. I don't know if I was just unlucky and caught it on a slow day, but on my visit, it was in the 70s and 80s with just a little bit of wind, and it felt like it was running pretty bad. I mean, just look at the speed that these 2 marquee elements are taken at. When you're crawling over the top hat like that, no one is getting airtime except maybe the back car. And the whole phenomenon this outward banking hill is attempting to achieve doesn't really happen because it's taken at such a slow pace. I don't know, these 2 core elements of the ride just kind of feel like they're too tall. With that being said, there are 2 other standout elements on this coaster. The first being that aforementioned airtime hill on the launch portion of the track, and the second being the 0G stall. In my opinion, this stall is as good, if not even better than the one on VelociCoaster. You get just insane sustained hang time on this element. Also, this little sideways airtime hill going into the final brake run is a surprisingly really good ejector moment. And these last 2 elements come together to create a pretty strong finish for the ride. And honestly, kind of completely save the ride from being a disappointment. Just some other quick thoughts on Pantheon. Like the other new for 2020 SeaWorld roller coasters, Pantheon has basically 0 thematic elements to it, which is kind of a bummer honestly, because I think the thematic concept of having each portion of the ride's layout representing a different Roman god could have been a really cool concept had they just tried at all. Also, this was my 350th roller coaster. So let's now go ahead and throw Pantheon into one of our tiers. And I thought about this for a while, but I do think that Pantheon has a place in that elite tier. Pantheon did have the misfortune of opening the year after VelociCoaster, which really has become the gold standard for launch coasters in the United States, if not the entire world. But when you look at Pantheon as its own roller coaster in a vacuum, free of any of the comparisons, it really is an elite ride. Between the speed and the airtime during the main launch portion, and the ride's really strong finale, Pantheon has a lot going for it. But I do think when you compare it to the elite Intamin multi-launch coasters in the United States, I just don't really see it in the same league as a Maverick or a VelociCoaster. On paper, I think Pantheon's elements looked really promising and kinda gave me the expectation that it would be as good as those two rides. But again, pacing on any coaster is important, and it's double important on a launched coaster. So when the pacing falls flat on two of the main elements of a ride that's just 3,300 feet long, it's hard to say if it's really one of the top 25 coasters in America, even if I do think it's an elite coaster. Did I just tease a top 25 video? Anyways, that's gonna do it for this coaster quickie. Again, if you could just do me a huge solid and chuck a like on the Park Pros Facebook page, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for checking out the video, and we'll see you all next time on Park Pros.